All right, let's keep going. We're still talking about discovering God's will. Now we're going to talk about how to study on your own. How to study on your own. Can we agree that it is not reasonable to expect the church to provide teaching on every subject matter and according to every member's desire to learn such subject matters? Can we also agree that there are some subject matters that people need to be aware of, whether the church covers the topic or not? Think about subjects, matters like how to manage taking care of aging parents, how to manage blended family issues, how to adjust to being downsized on your job, and more, right? So there's a lot going on in any congregation. Every individual have those things that they want to learn and understand. And they have not only a list of things they want to understand, but they have their own sense of urgency about the list. The corporate church as a body will rarely, if ever, be able to cover all of the subject matter as thoroughly as the individuals want it covered. And surely we will not be able to cover it according to your urgency requirements. So things that you think are very important to talk about now may not be covered by the church until 6 months from now. And then things that we're covering now may not be very urgent to you. So the reason you need to be able to study is so that you can go get answers to questions you have on your own timetable. Next paragraph. Given the church's limitations and the disciples' needs for understanding, this teaching aims to give some practical tips on how to study on your own. Teaching suggestion: coach students through the process of finding answers to the subject matter with which they are concerned. All right. So if you were one of my coaching students, we perhaps would do an exercise here where you would come up with a subject matter and I would coach you in gathering your resources and your understanding about the subject matter. That's a little bit beyond what we're trying to do in this video. Please consider the following tips, which you are free to add to and or modify. All right, so these are starter tips. They are very helpful to me in my own personal study habits, and I recommend them to you. But you're free to add, subtract, and modify as you see appropriate. So here's the first tip. Seek to understand the why, what, and how of the subject. Why is concerned with rationale and or urgency for becoming familiar with the subject matter. Understanding the what is primarily a matter of defining key terms in the subject matter. And the how is concerned with what should you do with the information with which you are becoming familiar. Feel free to add other questions to your scope of research. All right, so when you're talking about you're researching something, you're trying to get some information on something, what are you really talking about? You really want to know, why is the subject matter important? Then you want to know, what do I need to know about the subject matter? And then you want to know, how do I use this information? What am I supposed to do with it? So why, what, and how are the foundational questions. Now, as you dig into it, you're going to find other questions. So for example, when you dig into why, and you're researching and you're reading stuff about why, you're going to run into words you're not familiar with. That gets you to what? You'll find that there's competing ideals and all that kind of good stuff, right? And then sometimes you just wanted to know the information. You wasn't really trying to do anything. So the how might be light, whereas the why or the what might be heavy. You might have a lot of information gathered there. Number two, study reliable sources. Study reliable sources. It is always good to have some passages of scripture to build upon. Concordances and Christian education workers may be able to help you in this area. You can also use keywords to search book resources like Amazon, and you can use keywords to search the internet. With both books and internet, make sure you know who wrote the material. You are looking for reputable sources. Also aim to review at least 3 resources so you are not simply following after an unproven idea. Trusted advisors can help you find and or interpret your resources as well as be great resources themselves. All right, so where are you going to get this why, what, and how information from? You're going to get it from reliable sources. Where am I going to get the reliable sources from? I would suggest you start with a place like Amazon, the internet. I could easily add YouTube. I could easily add Udemy. Just Google the word Udemy, U-D-E-M-Y, Udemy, and other sources. Whatever source you're using, you want to make sure it is a reliable source. So some people write just for the sake of money. They don't really have expertise in the subject matter. They have marketing ability. So they don't know a whole lot, but they know how to present their opinion in a way that catches your attention. You're trying to find reliable sources of information so that as you build your understanding of why, what, and how, you're building it from good material. You would do well to try to find at least 3 resources to see, is there agreement among the 3 resources, and or trying to understand where they differ and why they differ, right? Number 3, here's the third thing to do in your own personal study. Document your findings. Number 3 is document your findings. If only for the sake of organizing your thoughts, documenting your findings is a good idea. The document may prove to be a blessing to others also. In fact, I would suggest you write as if someone is going to read the document. It may make you write in more complete and defendable ways. And it can be a reminder to yourself if you ever need to recollect your thoughts on the subject matter, right? So you're trying to find out why, what, and how. You're trying to get that information from reliable sources. But 3 months from now, you're going to probably forget it. So it's important that you document your findings, right? It doesn't have to be a college term paper. It's not a doctoral thesis that you're writing, but you do want to make some notes and you want to write it in a way that it kind of makes sense to your friend. Because one day you might want to give your friend your notes because they have the same questions that you have. And then you also want to write it in a complete way so that if 5 years from now, you find yourself wanting to go further with your studies, you don't have to start from the beginning. You can just pull out your documented findings. Number 4, appreciate that learning can be a progressive process. There may be questions that are important to you today that are not important tomorrow or were not important yesterday. New resources and deeper experiences may influence your developing different understanding to previous questions. All right, so you ought not think you're going to study today and get all of the information that you will ever need on that subject matter. No, several things are subject to happen. 1, you're subject to find different, perhaps better resources, which gives you deeper or different understanding. 2, you may find yourself having different questions to ask. And some of those questions will come out of your experiences. and urgency about the subject matter. So questions you might have about Social Security when you're 22 would be different than questions you have when you're 42, different than the questions you have when you are 62, 72, right? So it is a progressive process. Here then are the review questions. Why is it important for disciples to know how to study on their own? So we talked about that here, right? The church cannot give every disciple the information they want on their schedule. So disciples need to be equipped to know how to study on their own, right? Then we ask, by way of review, the following are the 4 tips for studying on your own. Seek to understand the why, what, and how. Why, what, and how. 2, study reliable resources. 3, document your findings. Number 4, appreciate that learning can be a progressive process. All right? And so I pray that this has been a blessing to you. That first question is a little fuzzy. Given the church's limitations and the disciples' need for understanding, this teaching aims to give some practical tips on how to study on your own. So why is it important? Because the church has limitations and the disciple needs understanding. That would be a nice tight sentence that you can put here for why is it important for disciples to know how to study on their own. All right, I pray that this has been a blessing to you. I look forward to sharing our next module together. Again, I pray that you're not just listening to me talk, but that you're actually gathering understanding and you are implementing, doing what God is calling you to do. I will see you in the next teaching. The Lord say so.